Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The financial and legal concepts discussed, including asset division, alimony, child support, and tax implications, are based on general historical trends and case studies within the United States. This content does not constitute professional legal, financial, or tax advice. Divorce laws vary significantly by state, and every individual situation is unique. We strongly advise you to consult with a qualified attorney and a certified financial planner to conduct your own due diligence before making any decisions regarding your personal or financial affairs. There is a silent wealth killer in America that no one likes to talk about until it is far too late. It is a phenomenon that can instantly vaporize 15 years of disciplined saving, compound interest, and career advancement in a matter of months. Statistically, for a high-earning man in the United States, a divorce is not just a personal tragedy. It is the single most significant financial event he will likely ever face. We are talking about a systemic economic footprint that often results in a permanent 30 to 50% drop in standard of living and a total destruction of the primary residence's equity. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every hour you spent working overtime, every dollar you sacrificed for your 401k, and every bit of equity you built in your family home has been cut in half or, in some cases, completely liquidated to cover legal fees. This is the reality of the divorce tax, a financial burden that can linger for decades, impacting retirement dates, investment capacity, and even your ability to secure future credit. Today, we are opening the books on the true cost of separation. We are going beyond the surface-level talk of alimony and looking at the granular, hidden expenses that drain bank accounts and stall legacies. By the end of this masterclass, you will understand the historical trends of male wealth post-divorce and the specific economic traps that most men fall into during the initial filing phase. This is the data-driven reality of what it actually costs to start over in 21st century America. To understand the economic footprint of divorce, we have to look at the immediate shock to the system. Most people view divorce as a single event, but from a financial perspective, it is a series of cascading liquidity crises. The moment a petition is filed, a man's balance sheet undergoes a radical transformation. Historically, we see a massive shift from long-term wealth building to short-term capital preservation. Let us look at a case study of a typical mid-career professional in a state like California or Texas. Suppose this individual has a household income of $150,000 and $400,000 in total assets, including home equity and retirement accounts. The second the legal process begins, he is hit with the attorney retainer. In high-conflict cases, these retainers often start at $5,000 to $15,000, but that is just the entry fee. This is non-productive capital. It is money that was sitting in a high-yield savings account or a brokerage fund, earning 5 to 7%, that is now being transferred to a law firm's trust account. This represents an immediate loss of opportunity cost. If that $15,000 had remained invested for another 20 years at a standard market return, it could have grown to over $60,000. This is the first footprint, the loss of future value on present legal spending. But the legal fees are only the tip of the iceberg. We have to discuss the two-household reality. One of the most overlooked economic impacts for men is the sudden doubling of cost of living expenses. When a marriage dissolves, the efficiency of a shared household vanishes. You are now paying for 2 mortgages or a mortgage and a high-end rental. You are paying for 2 sets of utilities, 2 internet bills, and 2 sets of groceries. For many men, this results in a negative cash flow situation within the first 60 days. Potential outcomes for those who do not prepare for this shift include a rapid accumulation of high-interest credit card debt, just to maintain a basic standard of living, while the court decides on temporary support orders. In many jurisdictions, a man may be required to pay status quo support. This means he is legally obligated to maintain the marital home and his wife's lifestyle, while simultaneously funding his own new residence. Historically, this period is when the most significant financial damage occurs because the man is effectively funding 2 lives on a single salary that was barely optimized for one. Then we have the destruction of the compounding machine. Wealth in America is built on the foundation of the 401k and the IRA. During a divorce, these are often subject to a qualified domestic relations order, or a QDRO. This is a legal mechanism that allows for the tax-free transfer of retirement funds from one spouse to another. While the transfer itself might be tax-free at the moment of the split, the long-term impact on the man's retirement timeline is devastating. If a 45-year-old man has to hand over $100,000 of his $200,000 retirement fund, he isn't just losing $100,000. He is losing 20 years of compound growth on that money. To replace that capital and return to his original retirement trajectory, he would have to significantly increase his monthly contributions at a time when his disposable income is at an all-time low due to child support or alimony. This often forces men to push their retirement age back by 5 to 10 years. This is not just a line item on a spreadsheet. It is thousands of hours of additional labor required to make up for the lost principal. We also have to analyze the tax implications, which often serve as a hidden surcharge on the divorce process. Most married men in the United States benefit from the married filing jointly tax status, which offers wider tax brackets and higher standard deductions. Post-divorce, a man typically shifts to the single filing status. For a high earner, this can mean moving into a higher effective tax bracket. Suddenly, more of every dollar earned is going to the federal government rather than into the individual's pocket. When you combine this higher tax burden with the loss of the mortgage interest deduction, if the family home is sold or given to the spouse, the net take-home pay can drop significantly. Case studies show that the transition from a dual-income, joint-filing household to a single-income, single-filing household can result in a 10 to 15% decrease in disposable wealth purely through tax inefficiencies. Furthermore, there is the issue of asset liquidation at the wrong time. In many divorce settlements, the only way to satisfy the equitable distribution of assets is to sell the primary residence. If this happens during a market downturn or a period of high interest rates, the man is forced to realize a loss or sell an asset that was intended to be a long-term hold. The transactional costs of selling a home, realtor commissions, closing costs, and moving expenses can eat up 6 to 10% of the total equity. This is wealth that simply disappears into the ether of the real estate market. For a man who is counting on that home equity to fund a future business venture or a child's education, this footprint is massive. He is left with a smaller pool of capital and a higher cost of entry for his next home purchase due to the loss of a low-interest rate mortgage that was likely locked in years prior. The economic footprint also extends to career stagnation. The psychological and time-intensive nature of divorce often leads to what economists call productivity drag. Between court dates, depositions, and the emotional toll of the process, many men find themselves unable to pursue promotions or high-stakes projects during the 2 to 3 years the divorce is finalized. Historically, this can lead to a career gap, where salary growth plateaus. When you factor in the lost raises and the missed bonuses, the total economic impact over a 5-year period can reach into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is the macro-level view of the divorce economy for men, a combination of immediate capital depletion, long-term growth destruction, and a persistent increase in the cost of basic survival. In the sections to follow, we will break down exactly how these forces interact and what the historical data tells us about the path to recovery. To understand the true scale of the economic footprint, we must look at how the legal geography of the United States in 2026 dictates your financial destiny. Where you live is as important as what you earn, and the rules of engagement differ wildly between state lines. There are 2 primary frameworks that govern the division of wealth: community property and equitable distribution. Imagine a character named John Smith, a senior software architect living in Austin, Texas, which is a community property state. John has spent the last 15 years building a successful career, but as he enters the divorce process in 2026, he realizes that the law views his marriage as a single economic unit. Everything John and his spouse acquired during their 12-year marriage is placed into a single bucket of wealth that is owned equally by both parties. It does not matter if John worked 80 hours a week while his spouse pursued a personal hobby or managed the household. The law assumes a 50-50 split of all marital assets. This includes the appreciation of his 401k, the equity in their primary residence, and even the increase in value of his restricted stock units that haven't fully vested yet. For John, the economic footprint is a mathematical certainty. He starts his new life with exactly half of his accumulated net worth, minus the massive legal fees required to litigate what is considered separate property versus community property. Contrast this with a man named Robert, who lives in an equitable distribution state like Florida or New York. Here, the court looks at what is fair, which is not always a clean split down the middle. In 2026, courts are increasingly looking at the economic partnership model. This means if Robert's spouse sacrificed her own career growth to support his rise to an executive position, the court might determine that a fair split is actually 60-40 in her favor. This is intended to compensate for her lost earning potential over the years. This is where the depth of the footprint becomes unpredictable and dangerous for high-earning men. Robert is not just losing assets, he is losing the predictability of his financial future. He is at the mercy of a judge's interpretation of fairness, which can be influenced by hundreds of different factors ranging from the length of the marriage to the current health of both parties. Now let us zoom in on the single largest asset for most American men: the marital home. In 2026, real estate remains the primary vehicle for middle-class wealth, but during a divorce, that house often transforms from a sanctuary into a massive financial anchor. Historically, there are three potential outcomes for the family home, and each one carries a heavy economic price tag. The first is the forced sale. In a high-interest rate environment, which many parts of the United States are navigating in 2026, selling the house and splitting the proceeds might seem like the cleanest break. However, the transaction costs are brutal. After paying a 6% realtor commission, staging costs, professional cleaning and closing fees, the actual cash that hits John Smith's pocket is significantly lower than the market value he saw on his real estate apps. He then has to enter a rental market where prices have surged, or try to buy a new home with a mortgage rate that is likely significantly higher than his previous joint mortgage. He has effectively liquidated his best appreciating asset at a time when the cost of replacing it is at an all-time high. The second outcome is the buyout. Imagine John wants to keep the house to maintain stability for his children. To do this, he must pay his spouse her share of the equity in cash. In 2026, with home values still near historic highs in suburban hubs, this often requires John to take out a home equity line of credit or perform a cash-out refinance at current market rates. He is essentially buying his own house for a second time, but under much more punishing financial terms. His monthly housing expense could easily double, leaving him with zero liquid cash to invest in the stock market or his own professional development. He keeps the asset, but he becomes house poor, making him extremely vulnerable to any future economic downturn or job loss. The third, and often most damaging outcome for men, is the deferred sale. This is where the spouse remains in the home, and the man continues to contribute to the mortgage as part of a support agreement, often until the youngest child turns 18. John is now paying for a roof he does not live under while also trying to fund his own new residence. From a wealth-building perspective, this is a total loss of momentum. He is contributing to the equity of an asset he cannot access or borrow against, while his own ability to save for a new down payment is non-existent. Beyond physical assets, we must look at the lifestyle analysis. In 2026, with the total digitization of all financial records, there is no hiding the cost of your previous life. Forensic accountants can now use AI-driven software to scan years of bank statements, credit card transactions, and Venmo histories in seconds. They are looking for the marital standard of living. If John Smith's household spent an average of $15,000 a month on travel, high-end groceries, private schools, and luxury car leases, the court uses this as the benchmark for future support. The economic footprint here is what we call the expectation of continuity. The court aims to keep the lower-earning spouse in the same relative comfort they enjoyed during the marriage. For the man, this often means he must live at 50% of his former lifestyle so that his ex-spouse can live at 90%. This creates a permanent drag on his ability to accumulate new capital, as a massive portion of his gross income is legally diverted before he even sees his paycheck. We also have to discuss the valuation of intangible assets, which is a growing trend in 2026. Many men are entrepreneurs or have professional practices. In a divorce, a business is not just a job. It is a piece of property to be valued and divided. Forensic accountants use complex methodologies like the capitalization of earnings or the discounted cash flow method to put a price tag on a man's company. Even if the business is primarily based on John's personal expertise and reputation, the court may assign it a goodwill value. John might be ordered to pay his spouse half of the value of a business that he cannot actually sell on the open market. He is forced to pay out cash today for the potential of his future earnings. This often forces men to take out business loans, essentially placing a mortgage on their own professional future and limiting their company's ability to grow or pivot. The psychological economic cost is the final layer of this footprint. The sheer volume of decision-making required during a 2026 divorce leads to what experts call decision fatigue. When you are exhausted by legal battles and emotional stress, you are more likely to make poor financial choices. You might agree to a lopsided settlement just to end the conflict, Or you might neglect your investment portfolio during a market swing. This hidden cost of lost focus can be just as damaging as the legal fees themselves. It results in a period of professional and financial stagnation that can take a decade to reverse. We have only scratched the surface of the immediate asset split and the hidden traps of valuation. But what happens when the dust settles and the recurring monthly obligations begin? The asset split is a one-time shock, but the real endurance test is the long-term transfer of wealth through the support systems. In the next part, we are going into the deep mechanics of alimony and child support in the year 2026. We will look at how the duration of marriage rules can turn a temporary setback into a lifelong financial obligation, and why the current tax landscape has made these payments more expensive for men than at any other time in American history. If you think the asset split was the hard part, wait until you see how the income floor works and why your future raises might not even belong to you. The shift from asset division to the world of ongoing support is where the economic footprint of divorce transforms from a one-time impact into a long-term structural deficit in a man's financial life. In the United States in 2026, we are living in the Post-Tax Cuts and Jobs Act era, which fundamentally altered the mathematics of alimony, or what is legally referred to as spousal maintenance. Historically, before the 2019 changes that have now become the permanent standard, alimony was tax-deductible for the person paying it and taxable income for the person receiving it. This allowed for a form of tax arbitrage where money was shifted from a high-earning husband's tax bracket to a lower-earning wife's bracket, effectively leaving more total cash on the table for the split family. That era is over. In 2026, alimony is paid in 100% post-tax dollars. This means that if a man like Mark, a senior project manager in Chicago, is ordered to pay $3,000 a month in spousal support, he has to earn roughly $4,500 to $5,000 in gross income just to cover that single obligation. The federal and state governments take their cut first, and Mark is left with the full weight of the payment without a single cent of tax relief. This is a massive silent surcharge that increases the real-world cost of support by 25 to 40% depending on his tax bracket. Imagine Mark's situation as a case study for the year 2026. He earns $180,000 a year. After a 15-year marriage, the court determines that his ex-spouse, who worked part-time, is entitled to maintenance to maintain a standard of living reasonably comparable to the one established during the marriage. The court looks at the net disposable income. Because Mark can no longer deduct these payments, his effective take-home pay is hollowed out. While the headline number might be $3,000 a month, the economic reality is that Mark is working nearly 2 weeks of every month just to satisfy the tax man and the support order before he can pay his own rent or buy groceries. This creates a liquidity trap. Mark cannot easily pivot his career or take a lower-paying, less stressful job because his support obligation is based on his peak earning capacity. This brings us to the concept of imputed income, a critical and often misunderstood element of the economic footprint. In 2026, the American legal system operates on the principle that a man must produce at his maximum demonstrated level. Imagine if Mark, burnt out by the divorce and the pressure of his high-stakes job, decides to quit and become a high school teacher, earning $60,000 instead of $180,000. In most U.S. jurisdictions, the court will not simply lower his support payments. Instead, they will impute income to him. They will state that because he has the skills, education, and history to earn $180,000, his support obligations will remain at the higher level. Mark is now legally required to pay support based on money he is no longer making. This creates a state of financial insolvency where his debt to the state and his ex-spouse grows every month, regardless of his actual bank balance. The economic footprint here is a literal ceiling on a man's personal freedom to change his life path. Beyond spousal maintenance, we must analyze the granular mechanics of child support. In 2026, over 40 states utilize the income shares model. This model is based on the idea that a child should receive the same proportion of parental income that they would have received if the parents lived together. While this sounds equitable, the step-by-step calculation often reveals a heavy burden on the higher earner. The court takes the combined income of both parents, determines a basic support obligation from a state-mandated table, and then prorates that amount based on each parent's percentage of the total income. If Mark earns 70% of the total household income, he pays 70% of the basic obligation. But the footprint does not stop at the base monthly check. In modern divorce cases, the real economic drain comes from the add-ons. These are the mandatory expenses for health insurance premiums, uninsured medical costs, and work-related childcare. In 2026, as healthcare costs continue to outpace inflation, the requirement for a man to maintain his children on a high-tier corporate insurance plan can cost an additional $500 to $1,000 per month in payroll deductions. Then there are the extracurricular activities. If the children were enrolled in competitive soccer, private music lessons, or elite tutoring during the marriage, the court will often order that these expenses continue, with the parents splitting the cost pro rata. For a man already struggling with the two-household reality we discussed earlier, these add-ons can consume the entirety of his remaining discretionary income. He is effectively working for the lifestyle of his children and his ex-spouse while he lives in a studio apartment eating ramen. There is also the success penalty, a phenomenon that haunts upwardly mobile men. In many states, child support and alimony are modifiable. This means that if Mark works hard and earns a $20,000 bonus or a promotion in 2027, his ex-spouse can file for an upward modification of support. The legal system allows the other party to capture a portion of his future success. This creates a paradoxical economic incentive where the more a man earns to try and dig himself out of the financial hole of divorce, the more the hole expands. The historical trend shows that for every dollar a man earns in a raise post-divorce, a significant percentage is immediately diverted to support and the legal fees required to litigate the modification. Furthermore, let us look at the requirement for life insurance to secure support. In almost every 2026 divorce settlement involving support, the payer is required to maintain a life insurance policy with the ex-spouse as the irrevocable beneficiary. This is to ensure that if the man dies, the support payments are guaranteed. This is another monthly line item. If the man is older or has health issues exacerbated by the stress of the divorce, the premiums for $1 million term policy can be substantial. This is wealth leaving his estate every month that will never benefit his future heirs or his own retirement. It is a sunk cost required by the state to protect the support stream. The duration of these payments is the final crushing weight of the footprint. While many states are moving toward durational limits on alimony, such as half the length of the marriage, a 10-year marriage can still result in 5 years of heavy payments. If a marriage lasted 20 years in some jurisdictions, the support can be indefinite until the payer reaches full retirement age, as defined by the Social Security Administration. Imagine being 50 years old and realizing that you will be paying a significant portion of your income to a former partner until you are 67. This prevents the accumulation of the catch-up contributions needed for retirement, creating a permanent wealth gap that most men can never close. We have mapped out the asset destruction and the long-term income drain of the support systems. But there is a hidden, even more complex layer to this economic footprint that involves the very thing men rely on for their sunset years. We need to talk about the intersection of divorce and the American retirement system. In the next part, we are going deep into the mechanics of Social Security, the specialized world of pension valuations, and why a divorce in your 40s or 50s can lead to a phenomenon known as the silver poverty trap. We will look at how your future government benefits can be split before you ever see a dime, and the specific strategies used in 2026 to protect what is left of your golden years. The cash flow is one thing, but the theft of your future time is where the true cost lies. To understand the silver poverty trap, we must look at the life of a character named David, a 58-year-old senior systems engineer living in Northern Virginia in the year 2026. David has spent 32 years in the workforce, 24 of those married. He and his spouse have built a respectable nest egg of $1.4 million across various 401k and brokerage accounts. They own a home worth $850,000 with a $200,000 mortgage remaining. On paper, David is on track for a comfortable retirement at age 65. However, the filing of a divorce petition in 2026 instantly changes the trajectory of his remaining working years. This is the moment the economic footprint shifts from a temporary cash flow issue to a permanent alteration of his elder years. In a gray divorce, the most immediate impact is the halving of the retirement corpus. Under the laws of equitable distribution or community property, that $1.4 million is split. David is left with $700,000. While $700,000 sounds like a significant sum, the math of 2026 tells a different story. Based on the 4% rule, a standard benchmark for sustainable retirement withdrawals, $700,000 generates only $28,000 of annual income. Before the divorce, the full $1.4 million would have generated $56,000, which, combined with 2 Social Security checks and a paid-off home, provided a secure lifestyle. Now, David faces a 50% reduction in his projected retirement income, while his individual cost of living, Health insurance, property taxes, and utilities remains at 70 to 80% of what the joint household cost. This is the structural deficit that leads to the silver poverty trap. Historical trends in the United States show that men who divorce after age 50 experience a 21% drop in their standard of living that rarely recovers. For David, the problem is time. Wealth building is a function of principal, rate of return, and time. At age 58, David has lost 50% of his principal and has only 7 years of time left before his intended retirement. To return to his original $1.4 million goal, he would need to achieve unrealistic annual returns or contribute an impossible amount of his remaining salary that is currently being taxed at a higher single rate and potentially being diverted to alimony. Imagine if David tried to make up the $700,000 gap. Even if he maximized his 2026 401k catch-up contributions, which allow those over 50 to save extra, he would still fall hundreds of thousands of dollars short. This forces a potential outcome where David must work until age 72 or 75, a period where health issues often begin to limit earning capacity. We must then navigate the specialized and often treacherous world of defined benefit plans and pensions. If David were a government employee, a teacher, or a veteran, his pension would be one of his most valuable assets. In a 2026 divorce, the court uses a mechanism called a Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or QDRO, to carve out a portion of that future monthly check for the ex-spouse. The calculation typically follows the coverture fraction. This is a step-by-step mathematical formula where the numerator is the number of months the couple was married while David was earning the pension, and the denominator is the total number of months David participated in the plan. If David was in the plan for 300 months and married for 240 of them, the coverture fraction is 0.8. The ex-spouse is then typically awarded half of that marital portion, or 40% of David's future monthly check. David is left trying to survive on 60% of a pension he spent 30 years earning. Unlike a 401k, you cannot contribute more to a pension to make up for the loss. It is a fixed, diminished reality. Then there is the complexity of Social Security. In the United States, if a marriage lasts at least 10 years, a divorced spouse is entitled to claim benefits based on the other spouse's work record. While this does not technically reduce the amount David receives from his own check, it represents a significant economic footprint on the social contract. More importantly for David's personal economy, he loses the ability to benefit from a second Social Security check in the household. In 2026, the maximum Social Security benefit for a high earner is a vital component of the retirement floor. Losing the spouse's contribution to the household budget means David must now cover 100% of the property taxes and home maintenance with only his single check. This often leads to a forced downsizing into a rental market where he builds no equity, further eroding his long-term net worth. The footprint deepens when we examine the cost of health insurance. If David's spouse was covered under his employer-sponsored plan, the divorce creates a new administrative and financial burden. While COBRA allows for a temporary extension of coverage for the ex-spouse, it is notoriously expensive, often costing $1,000 to $1,500 a month in 2026. If the divorce settlement requires David to cover this cost for a period, it is an immediate drain on his liquid cash. Furthermore, David himself faces the reality of aging alone. In a joint household, spouses often provide informal long-term care for one another. Post-divorce, David must face the potential outcome of paying for professional home health care or assisted living entirely out of his diminished assets. In 2026, the cost of a private room in an assisted living facility can exceed $7,000 a month in many U.S. metros. Without a spouse to help navigate these years, David's remaining $700,000 could be entirely liquidated by medical and care costs in less than a decade. Let us also consider the tax sunset trap. In 2026, many of the tax provisions from the previous decade are scheduled to shift. For a man in David's position, the loss of the married filing jointly status, combined with the loss of various itemized deductions associated with a larger family home, can result in a significantly higher effective tax rate. He is earning the same salary, but his take-home pay is smaller, and his ability to fund his recovery accounts is hampered by the federal government's larger slice of his income. Case studies of men in high-tax states like New Jersey or Connecticut show that the shift from joint to single filing can feel like an automatic 5 to 8% pay cut. Furthermore, we must address the psychological impact on investment strategy. Men going through a late-life divorce often exhibit two dangerous financial behaviors. extreme risk aversion or extreme risk-taking. Out of fear of losing what little they have left, some men move their entire portfolios into cash or low-yield bonds in 2026, failing to keep pace with inflation and ensuring they will outlive their money. Others, desperate to regain their former status, chase high-risk investments like speculative equities or unproven digital assets, leading to a potential outcome of total capital loss. Both paths are a direct result of the economic trauma caused by the dissolution of the marital unit. The final layer of the silver poverty trap is the impact on legacy. For a man like David, part of his economic identity was the ability to leave an inheritance to his children or grandchildren. The 2026 divorce footprint effectively erases that legacy. The assets that would have been passed down are instead consumed by the legal process, the doubling of living expenses, and the increased cost of single-payer healthcare. The wealth that took 30 years to build is liquidated in the present, leaving nothing for the future. We have explored the devastation of the retirement years and the mathematical trap of the gray divorce. But what about the invisible weights that pull a man down during the prime of his career? The assets and the pensions are the visible markers, but there is a hidden underworld of financial liability that can destroy a man's credit and his ability to even rent an apartment, let alone buy a new home. In the next part, we are going to dive into the hidden debt trap. We will look at how joint credit cards, cosign loans, and the dark side of the American credit system can leave a man responsible for debts he didn't even know existed, and why your ex-spouse spending habits in 2026 can haunt your FICO score for the next 7 years. If you think the asset split was the end of the story, you haven't seen what happens when the collectors start calling. The collectors do not care about your divorce decree. This is the fundamental cold reality of the American credit system that thousands of men like James, a 42-year-old account executive in Atlanta, discover too late in 2026. James walks out of the courtroom with a signed piece of paper stating that his ex-spouse is responsible for the $25,000 in balances across 3 joint credit cards. He feels a sense of relief, believing that the legal system has successfully walled off that liability. However, 3 months later, James attempts to lease a new apartment closer to his office, only to have his application denied. When he pulls his credit report, he sees a 120-point drop. The reason is simple. His ex-spouse missed 2 payments on those joint cards. When James calls the bank to explain that the court ordered her to pay, the customer service representative gives him the standard industry line. The bank was not a party to your divorce. This is the joint and several liability trap. In the United States, if your name is on a contract with a creditor, you are 100% responsible for that debt, regardless of what a family court judge says. The divorce decree is an agreement between you and your ex-spouse, but it does not supersede the original contract you signed with the lender. Historical trends in 2026 show that a significant percentage of men face this exact fallout. The economic footprint here is not just the $25,000 debt itself. It is the destruction of James's borrowing power at a time when he needs it most. With a trashed FICO score, James is now looking at subprime interest rates for a new car loan, which could cost him an extra $150 a month in interest alone. Over a 5-year loan, that is $9,000 in pure loss caused by a debt he was legally told was no longer his. The collectors do not care about your divorce decree. This is the fundamental cold reality of the American credit system that thousands of men like James, a 42-year-old account executive in Atlanta, discover too late in 2026. James walks out of the courtroom with a signed piece of paper stating that his ex-spouse is responsible for the $25,000 in balances across 3 joint credit cards. He feels a sense of relief, believing that the legal system has successfully walled off that liability. However, 3 months later, James attempts to lease a new apartment closer to his office, only to have his application denied. When he pulls his credit report, he sees a 120-point drop. The reason is simple. His ex-spouse missed 2 payments on those joint cards. When James calls the bank to explain that the court ordered her to pay, the customer service representative gives him the standard industry line. The bank was not a party to your divorce. This is the joint and several liability trap. In the United States, if your name is on a contract with a creditor, you are 100% responsible for that debt, regardless of what a family court judge says. The divorce decree is an agreement between you and your ex-spouse, but it does not supersede the original contract you signed with the lender. Historical trends in 2026 show that a significant percentage of men face this exact fallout. The economic footprint here is not just the $25,000 debt itself. It is the destruction of James's borrowing power at a time when he needs it most. With a trash FICO score, James is now looking at subprime interest rates for a new car loan, which could cost him an extra $150 a month in interest alone. Over a 5-year loan, that is $9,000 in pure loss caused by a debt he was legally told was no longer his. Imagine the scenario of the co-signed auto loan. Back in 2024, James co-signed for a luxury SUV for his spouse. In 2026, as part of the settlement, she keeps the vehicle and is ordered to make the payments. But if she loses her job or simply decides to prioritize other bills, the lender will come after James. They will not just call her. They will report the delinquency on his credit profile. Because the SUV is a high-value asset, a repossession on James's record would be catastrophic. He might be forced to make the payments himself just to protect his credit, effectively paying for a car he no longer drives and doesn't own. This is a common potential outcome where men are forced to choose between financial blackmail and credit ruin. Then we have the invisible world of the home equity line of credit, or HELOC. Many couples in the US use a HELOC as a revolving door of credit for home improvements or lifestyle expenses. In the lead-up to a 2026 divorce, a frustrated or vengeful spouse might draw down the remaining $50,000 of available credit on a joint HELOC. Because it is a joint account, the bank allows the withdrawal without notifying the other partner. James wakes up to find that the equity in his home, the asset he was counting on to fund his post-divorce life, has been hollowed out. He is now responsible for half of that new debt in the eyes of the court, but he is 100% responsible for it in the eyes of the bank. To remove his name from that HELOC, the house usually must be refinanced or sold, both of which are expensive and time-consuming processes in the 2026 real estate market. The footprint deepens when we look at the IRS and joint tax returns. In 2026, the IRS is increasingly utilizing advanced data matching to audit returns from 2 or 3 years prior. If James and his spouse filed a joint return in 2024, and the IRS later finds an error or unreported income from the spouse's side hustle, James is hit with the bill. Under the doctrine of joint and several liability for taxes, the IRS can collect the entire deficiency, plus penalties and interest from James alone. While there is a legal provision called innocent spouse relief, the criteria are notoriously difficult to meet in 2026. Most men simply end up paying the tax debt to avoid wage garnishment or liens on their property. This represents a retrospective economic footprint, where mistakes from the past marriage continue to drain the man's current bank account years after the split. Let us analyze the step-by-step detail of how this credit destruction impacts a man's ability to rebuild. In the United States, your credit score is your economic resume. In 2026, it affects everything from your car insurance premiums to your ability to pass a background check for a high-level job. If James's score drops from 780 to 620 due to his ex-spouse spending habits, his insurance company may re-rate his policy, leading to a 20% increase in his annual premiums. If he is up for a promotion that requires a security clearance or financial bonding, the sudden appearance of high debt-to-income ratios and late payments can stall his career advancement. This is the productivity drag we discussed earlier, manifested through the credit system. Furthermore, there is the cost of credit repair. James may feel forced to hire professional services to dispute the marks on his record, or to hire a lawyer to take his ex-spouse back to court for violating the divorce decree. These legal fees often start at $3,000 to $5,000. Even if he wins and the judge holds her in contempt, he cannot get back the time he spent dealing with the stress, nor can he easily erase the fact that the negative information sat on his report for 6 months. The historical data suggests that for every month of credit delinquency during a divorce, it takes approximately 4 months of perfect behavior to return to the original baseline. We must also consider the hidden debt of utility liens and municipal fines. In many U.S. cities in 2026, unpaid water bills or property fines are attached to the property itself, not just the individual. If James moves out but his name remains on the deed while the divorce is pending, he is legally responsible for any fines the city levies for an unkept lawn or unpaid utilities. These small, nagging expenses can add up to thousands of dollars, acting as a constant leak in his financial bucket. The final layer of the hidden debt trap is the impact on future lending capacity. Even if James's credit score remains intact, the existence of a high alimony or child support obligation is factored into his debt-to-income ratio. When he goes to buy a new home in 2027, the lender will subtract his support payments from his gross income. If James earns $10,000 a month but pays $3,500 in support, the bank views him as only earning $6,500. This drastically reduces the mortgage he can qualify for, often forcing him out of the housing market entirely and into the rental trap, where he continues to pay someone else's mortgage instead of building his own equity. This web of debt and liability is the structural foundation of the economic footprint. It is the cage that prevents a man from moving forward, regardless of how much he earns. But the credit report and the tax man are only half of the story. There is a specific, often devastating impact that occurs when a man is a business owner or an aspiring entrepreneur. In the next part, we are going deep into the valuation of professional practice. We will look at how the concept of enterprise goodwill can lead to a man paying for the ghost of his future work, and why your 2026 business partner might suddenly be your ex-spouse lawyer. If you have ever dreamed of building a company, you need to see how the court places a price tag on your ambition. To truly grasp the economic footprint for an entrepreneur, we have to look at the life of Michael, a man who spent his 30s building a high-end architectural firm in Denver. By 2026, Michael's firm employs 12 people and generates a steady $2 million in annual revenue. In Michael's mind, he is the business. If he stops working, the revenue stops. However, the legal system in 2026 sees it differently. The court views his firm not just as a job, but as a marital asset with a distinct, appraisable value that must be divided. This is where the concept of business valuation becomes a financial minefield, and for Michael, it is the start of a liquidity crisis that could take a decade to resolve. Imagine if a court-appointed forensic accountant walks into your office. Their job is to put a price tag on your sweat equity and your future ambition. In 2026, they use 3 primary methodologies, and none of them are favorable to the man trying to keep his company intact. The first is the asset-based approach. This is the floor. It looks at the fair market value of your office equipment, your software licenses, and your accounts receivable. But for a professional practice, the assets are usually minimal compared to the revenue. The real danger lies in the second and third methods, the income approach and the market approach. Under the income approach, the accountant looks at Michael's last 5 years of profit and projects them into the future, discounting them back to a present-day cash value. They are essentially telling Michael that because he was successful in the past, he owes his ex-spouse a massive lump sum today for the money he hasn't even earned yet. Historical trends show that the most contentious part of this process is the calculation of goodwill. This is the value of the business above and beyond its tangible assets. In 2026, courts distinguish between enterprise goodwill and personal goodwill. Enterprise goodwill is the value associated with the business itself, its location, its brand name, and its recurring contracts. Personal goodwill is the value tied specifically to Michael's talent and reputation. In many U.S. jurisdictions, personal goodwill is considered a separate asset and is not divisible. However, the burden of proof is on Michael. He must pay his own forensic expert, often at a rate of $500 an hour, to argue that the clients come to the firm for him, not the brand. If he fails to make this distinction, he could find himself paying out 50% of a valuation that is based entirely on his own personality and future labor. Now let us look at the step-by-step reality of the buyout. Suppose the court values Michael's firm at $1.5 million. Under a 50-50 split, Michael owes his ex-spouse $750,000. Michael does not have $750,000 sitting in a checking account. His wealth is tied up in the business and the family home. To satisfy the judgment, Michael is forced to take out a business loan in a 2026 interest rate environment that is significantly higher than the previous decade. He is now saddled with a massive monthly debt service that he must pay out of his post-tax profits. This is money that should have gone toward hiring a new lead architect or upgrading his firm's AI rendering capabilities. Instead, the firm's growth is paralyzed. The economic footprint here is the stagnation of the enterprise. Potential outcomes for Michael include a 3 to 5 year period where he cannot reinvest in his business, allowing competitors who are not going through a divorce to leapfrog him in the market. This leads us to the most controversial economic phenomenon in the 2026 divorce landscape: double dipping. This occurs when the court treats the same income stream as both a marital asset to be divided and as a source of alimony. Imagine Michael is ordered to pay his ex-spouse $750,000 for her share of the business's value, which was calculated based on the firm's projected earnings. Then the court turns around and uses those same earnings to calculate a $6,000 a month alimony payment. Michael is essentially paying for the same dollar twice. He pays for the right to keep the income-producing asset, and then he pays out the income the asset produces. This is a success tax that specifically targets high-performing men. It creates a ceiling on Michael's personal wealth accumulation because the more he grows the firm to pay off the business loan, the more his ex-spouse can potentially claim in an upward modification of alimony. The forensic audit also brings about the characterization of discretionary spending. In 2026, AI-driven accounting software can flag every dinner, every flight, and every car lease that Michael ran through the business. During the marriage, these were tax-efficient ways to maintain a high lifestyle. In a divorce, these are added back to Michael's income. The accountant will argue that while Michael's salary is $200,000, his real income is $275,000 once you account for the personal benefit of his business expenses. The court then calculates child support and alimony based on this inflated $275,000 figure. Michael is hit with a double blow. He loses the tax benefits of the business expenses because they are now scrutinized, and his support obligations skyrocket. Furthermore, we must address the business partner trap. In some extreme case studies, if a man cannot afford a cash buyout, the court may award the ex-spouse a percentage of the actual ownership of the company. Imagine Michael waking up to find that his ex-spouse is now a silent partner with a 49% stake in his architectural firm. She has the legal right to inspect the books, attend shareholder meetings, and potentially block major business decisions or the sale of the company. This creates an environment of operational paralysis. No new partner will want to buy into the firm, and no bank will want to extend credit to a company mired in such a messy ownership structure. Michael is effectively a prisoner in his own company, working for a partner who has every incentive to make his life difficult. The footprint also extends to the loss of networking capital. For a business owner, your professional circle is your net worth. The stress and time commitment of a 2026 divorce often force men to retreat from industry boards, country clubs, and networking events. These are the places where the $2 million contracts are born. When Michael disappears from these circles for 18 months to fight a legal battle, he loses his spot in the referral economy. The historical data suggests that for every year a man is distracted by a high-conflict divorce, it takes 2 years to regain his previous level of market influence. We have seen how the divorce process can turn a thriving business into a debt-laden anchor. We have looked at the math of valuation and the trap of double-dipping. But there is another silent killer of male wealth that occurs outside the courtroom. It is the phenomenon of the social and networking tax. When the marriage ends, the man often loses more than just a partner. He loses access to the social infrastructure that supported his career and his mental health. In the next part, we are going to dive into the secondary economy of divorce. We will look at the massive costs of rebuilding a social life from scratch, the hidden price of forced relocation, and why the loss of a man's social capital in 2026 is the most underrated financial hit of all. If you think the legal fees were the only thing draining your account, wait until you see what it costs to find your place in the world again. The social infrastructure of a man's life is a silent asset on his balance sheet, one that usually remains invisible until it is liquidated by the divorce process. To see this in action, we must look at the life of Alex, a 45-year-old vice president of marketing in Seattle. In the year 2026, Alex is navigating the first 12 months of his post-divorce life, and he is quickly discovering that the economic footprint of his separation extends far beyond the courtroom and the bank. He is facing the social and networking tax, a phenomenon where the destruction of a marital unit leads to a massive, unquantifiable loss of professional and personal leverage. Imagine Alex's life before the split. For 15 years, his social calendar was managed by a joint effort that placed him in a specific tier of the Seattle community. His Friday night dinners were not just social gatherings. They were unofficial networking sessions with other executives, venture capitalists, and civic leaders. These relationships provided him with early information on job openings, investment opportunities, and market trends. This is what economists call social capital. In 2026, social capital is as vital as liquid capital. However, historical trends show that in American divorces, social circles often follow the primary caregiver, or the spouse who was the social architect of the marriage. For Alex, the split means he is no longer invited to the couple's only retreats or the neighborhood gatherings that were the bedrock of his influence. The first step-by-step cost Alex faces is the liquidation of the domestic portfolio. When Alex moved out of the family's 3,500 square foot home and into a 1,000 square foot luxury apartment in the city, he didn't just change his address. He incurred a massive replacement cost. In 2026, the price of furnishing a new life is staggering. Because his ex-spouse kept the primary residence and the majority of the household goods, Alex had to purchase everything from scratch. We are talking about the basic infrastructure of survival. A high-quality mattress, a kitchen suite, linens, a television, and home office equipment. In a high-inflation environment, this new life starter kit can easily cost between $20,000 and $45,000 in post-tax income. This is money that is not being invested in the S&P 500 or his 401k. It is being spent on depreciating assets just to return to a baseline of comfort. Next, we must analyze the membership and access tax. In major U.S. metros like Seattle, Chicago, or Austin, high-level networking often happens within the confines of private social clubs, country clubs, or elite co-working spaces. During the marriage, Alex and his spouse shared a family membership. Post-divorce, Alex often has to secure his own individual membership. In 2026, initiation fees for these clubs have surged to maintain exclusivity. Alex might be looking at a $10,000 to $15,000 entry fee plus monthly dues that are no longer subsidized by a joint household budget. If he chooses not to pay this tax, he loses access to the very people who can help him secure his next $250,000 year role. The economic footprint here is the potential outcome of career stagnation. Without that social proximity, he is just another resume in an AI-driven hiring pile, rather than a referral from a trusted peer. Then there is the dating economy of 2026. For a man re-entering the market after a decade or two, the financial landscape of romance has shifted radically. Dating is no longer a casual endeavor. It is a high-cost search process. Alex finds himself spending money on premium subscriptions for AI-enhanced dating apps, which promise better matching but come with a monthly price tag. Then there is the cost of the dates themselves. In a top-tier U.S. city, a standard dinner and drinks for two at a reputable establishment can easily exceed $200. If Alex goes on 2 dates a week, he is looking at a monthly entertainment budget of $1,600. Over a year, that is nearly $20,000 spent on the search for a new partner. This is a recurring expense that many men fail to account for when they are calculating their post-divorce cash flow. Furthermore, we must address the geography of support and the travel tax. In many 2026 cases, the primary parent may decide to relocate to be closer to their own extended family for support. If Alex's ex-spouse moves the children from Seattle to Denver, Alex is now hit with a permanent transportation surcharge. To maintain his relationship with his children, he must pay for monthly flights, rental cars, and hotel stays. Case studies of long-distance parenting show that these costs can range from $12,000 to $25,000 a year. Over 10 years of a child's minority, Alex could spend $250,000 just on the logistics of being a father. This is capital that is completely unproductive, providing no return on investment other than the maintenance of a biological bond. The footprint also includes the loss of what we call the spousal subsidy for career advancement. Historically, many high-earning men in the U.S. were able to work 60 or 70 hours a week because they had a spouse managing the complexities of home life, dry cleaning, grocery shopping, home maintenance, and administrative tasks. Once Alex is on his own, he realizes that time is money in a very literal sense. He now has to outsource these tasks to professional services. In 2026, the cost of home cleaning, grocery delivery, and a personal assistant to manage his life can consume another $1,500 a month. If he doesn't outsource them, he has to perform them himself, which means he is less productive at work. This leads to a potential outcome of missed bonuses or overlooked promotions because he simply does not have the bandwidth he once possessed. We also have to consider the mental health and productivity link. The isolation that often follows a divorce for men can lead to a period of economic withdrawal. When a man loses his social network and his family structure simultaneously, his professional output often takes a hit. In 2026, corporations are increasingly using performance analytics to track employee efficiency. A man going through a high-conflict divorce may show a 15 to 20% drop in key performance indicators. This can result in him being placed on a performance improvement plan or being the first to be let go during a corporate restructuring. The hidden cost of the divorce is the loss of job security at a time when he is most financially vulnerable. The final layer of the social and networking tax is the impact on future partnership economics. In 2026, the concept of assortative mating is stronger than ever. High earners tend to marry other high earners. By losing his social standing and his accumulated net worth, Alex becomes less attractive to the very type of partner who could help him rebuild his household wealth. He is no longer bringing a full portfolio to a new relationship. This is the bagged wealth problem. He is carrying the baggage of his previous financial obligations into any future union, which can make a second marriage or a long-term partnership more difficult to secure or more economically lopsided. We have mapped out the devastation of the social network and the high cost of rebuilding a lifestyle from the ground up. We've seen how the invisible infrastructure of a man's life can be just as expensive to replace as his 401k is to split. But as we move into the final stages of this deep dive, we have to look at the ultimate endgame of the economic footprint. It isn't just about the money you lose today or the debt you carry tomorrow. It is about the permanent change in your wealth velocity. In the next part, we are going to explore the compound interest of loss. We will look at how the 2026 economy punishes those who have to restart in their 40s and 50s, and we will analyze the specific mathematical reasons why a man who divorces often finds himself on a completely different life path than the one he spent 20 years building. The footprint is not a snapshot, it is a trajectory. Are you prepared for where that trajectory leads? To understand the true magnitude of the trajectory change, we must analyze the concept of wealth velocity through the life of Christopher, a 50-year-old mid-level executive in Columbus, Ohio, in the year 2026. Christopher spent 25 years adhering to the traditional American economic script. He contributed to his 401k, paid down a low-interest mortgage, and invested in a diversified brokerage account. Before his divorce filing in early 2026, Christopher's household net worth sat at $1.2 million. In the linear math of a marriage, Christopher was 7 years away from a retirement that featured a paid-off home and a withdrawal rate that supported a comfortable lifestyle. However, the economic footprint of his divorce does not just subtract from his current balance. It resets his wealth velocity to zero at the exact moment his earning years are peaking and his recovery window is closing. The first step-by-step detail of this trajectory shift is the catastrophic loss of compound interest. In 2026, Christopher is ordered to split his $800,000 retirement portfolio. He is left with $400,000. To the casual observer, this is a $400,000 loss. To an economist, this is a multi-million-dollar deletion of future security. If we look at historical trends of the S&P 500, which has averaged roughly 7 to 10% annual returns over long periods, that $400,000 Christopher lost would have likely grown to approximately $1.5 million by the time he reached age 70. By removing that principal in 2026, the legal system has not just taken half of what Christopher has, it has taken the vast majority of what he was going to have. Because Christopher is 50, he lacks the time horizon required for a new $400,000 principal to undergo the same compounding cycles. This is the compound interest of loss. Christopher is now forced to assume a much higher level of risk in his remaining $400,000 just to try and narrow the gap, which leads to a potential outcome of further capital erosion if the 2026 market experiences a downturn. Next, we must examine the interest rate delta, which is a specific and brutal economic footprint of the mid-2020s. In 2021, Christopher and his spouse refinanced their family home at a 3% interest rate. Their monthly principal and interest payment was $1,800. As part of the 2026 settlement, the house is sold to liquidate the equity. Christopher takes his $150,000 share of the equity and attempts to buy a modest townhouse. However, in 2026, mortgage rates are hovering around 7.5%. For the same loan amount he had previously, his new payment would be nearly $3,200. This $1,400 monthly difference is a pure lifestyle tax. Over the next 15 years, Christopher will pay an additional $252,000 in interest alone, with zero added benefit to his quality of life. This is money that is diverted from his brokerage account to a bank's bottom line. When you combine this with the loss compounding on his retirement fund, Christopher is effectively working for the bank and the legal system, rather than for his own future. Then, there is the phenomenon of the recovery paradox. Imagine Christopher decides to work even harder to make up for these losses. He takes on a consulting side gig or pushes for a high-travel, high-bonus role within his company. In the year 2026, this increased effort can backfire due to the mechanics of support modifications. If Christopher increases his income from $140,000 to $190,000, His ex-spouse may file for an increase in spousal maintenance or child support. In many U.S. jurisdictions, the court views this new income as part of his ability to pay. Christopher finds himself in a situation where he is working 60 hours a week, but after taxes and increased support obligations, his net take-home pay only increases by a fraction of his effort. This creates a psychological and economic glass ceiling. Historically, men in this position often experience burnout or choose to intentionally plateau their careers because the marginal utility of their extra labor is so low. The economic footprint here is the total loss of Christopher's peak productivity years. Furthermore, we must address the human capital devaluation that occurs for men over 50 in the 2026 job market. In a marriage, Christopher had a hedge against job loss: his spouse's income, or at least the reduced overhead of a shared household. Post-divorce, Christopher is a single point of failure. If his company undergoes an AI-driven restructuring, which is a common trend in 2026, Christopher's age makes him a target for higher salary layoffs. Without the safety net of the marital unit, a 6-month period of unemployment can completely liquidate his remaining $400,000 retirement fund just to cover his high-interest mortgage and support payments. Case studies show that for men over 50, the time it takes to find a comparable salary level is twice as long as it is for those in their 30s. This vulnerability is a direct, albeit invisible, footprint of the divorce. The footprint also extends to the erosion of multi-generational wealth. Christopher's original plan was to help his children with down payments on their first homes and to leave behind a significant inheritance. In 2026, that legacy is vaporized. The assets that would have been passed down are instead consumed by the two-household lifestyle and the legal fees of the divorce. This has a cascading effect on the next generation's wealth velocity. Christopher's children will now have to take on larger student loans and stay in the rental market longer because the family safety net has been dismantled. This is the macroeconomic footprint of divorce, the interruption of the American engine of generational wealth transfer. Let us also consider the tax sunset trap of 2026. For a decade, many American men benefited from specific tax structures that are scheduled to shift or expire. For Christopher, the transition from married filing jointly to single filer is a forced migration into a higher effective tax bracket. In 2026, the standard deduction for a single person is significantly lower than for a married couple. Christopher finds that even with the same gross salary, his net monthly paycheck has shrunk by several $100s due to tax withholding alone. When he tries to claim his children as dependents to offset this, he often discovers that the right to claim them has been negotiated away in the divorce settlement or alternates years, providing only a partial and inconsistent relief. The final element of this trajectory shift is the cost of single-payer aging. In a 2026 joint household, the plan for long-term care was often a combination of long-term care insurance and spousal support. For the single man, the insurance premiums for a high-quality long-term care policy are significantly higher. If he does not have this insurance, he is looking at the potential outcome of total asset depletion by age 80 to cover the costs of a nursing facility. Historically, divorced men are more likely to rely on state-funded care than married men, simply because their individual wealth was not enough to survive the inflation of the healthcare sector. Christopher's story is not an outlier. It is the data-driven reality of the 2026 economic footprint. He started with a clear path to a $2 million retirement and ended with a fragmented portfolio, a high-interest debt load, and a career that is now a treadmill rather than a ladder. The footprint is not just a hole in his bank account. It is a permanent redirection of his life's work. We have now analyzed the asset splits, the debt traps, the business valuations, and the long-term trajectory of the compound interest of loss. We have seen how the legal and financial systems of 2026 intersect to create a unique and punishing landscape for men. But as we reach the conclusion of this masterclass, there is one final question to answer. After the dust settles, after the bank accounts are divided, and after the moving trucks have left, what does the new normal actually look like? In the final part of this series, we are going to look at the total tally. We will provide the ultimate breakdown of the lifetime cost of a midlife divorce in America, and we will explore the historical trends of those who managed to find a path to stability versus those who remained in the silver poverty trap. This is the final accounting. Do you know what your true number is? To arrive at that true number, we must execute a 20-year forensic audit on the life of Thomas, a 52-year-old regional director in the logistics industry based in Charlotte, North Carolina. In the year 2026, Thomas is finalizing a divorce after 22 years of marriage. To see the full economic footprint, we cannot just look at the day his decree is signed. We have to look at where Thomas stands in the year 2046 at age 72, and compare that reality to the one he was on track for before the split. This is the only way to quantify the true lifetime cost of the divorce tax. The first step in this final accounting is the calculation of the principal gap. In 2026, Thomas saw his $1.1 million retirement portfolio split down the middle. He walked away with $550,000. Historically, we know that the final 15 years of a career are the peak compounding years. By removing $550,000 from his wealth engine at age 52, Thomas did not just lose $500,000. He lost the ability for that money to double and then double again. Using a standard historical trend of 7% annual growth, that missing $550,000 would have grown to approximately $2.1 million by 2046. This is the first and most massive component of his footprint, a $2.1 million deficit in his elder age security. This is not a theoretical loss. It is a literal reduction in the quality of the healthcare, housing, and travel he will be able to afford in his 70s. Next, we factor in the cumulative support surcharge. From 2026 to 2036, Thomas is ordered to pay a combination of spousal maintenance and child support for his two youngest children. We will assume a monthly total of $4,000. Over 10 years, this is a raw cash transfer of $480,000. However, because Thomas is paying this in the 2026 tax environment as a single filer, we have to look at the gross earnings required to make those payments. To net $4,000 after federal, state, and FICA taxes, Thomas must earn approximately $6,200 of gross income every month. Over a decade, Thomas has to earn $744,000 just to satisfy the $480,000 in support. The economic footprint here is the nearly $750,000 of his peak earning labor that resulted in zero personal equity or retirement savings. Then we must look at the real estate opportunity cost. In 2026, Thomas and his spouse sold their family home, which carried a 2.8% mortgage rate. Thomas used his share of the equity to buy a smaller townhome at a 7.2% interest rate. Because of the higher rate and the single income profile, Thomas was forced to take a smaller home with a higher monthly payment. By 2046, the difference in interest paid between his old marital mortgage and his new divorce mortgage totals over $310,000. Furthermore, the townhome he bought has a historical trend of appreciating at a slower rate than the suburban family home he was forced to sell. By 2046, the equity gap, the difference between the value of the home he would have owned and the one he actually owns, is an additional $200,000. We add to this the lifestyle and reconstruction tax. As we detailed in previous sections, the cost of furnishing a new residence, the dating economy, and the loss of shared household efficiencies typically costs a man in Thomas's position an extra $1,500 per month in discretionary spending compared to his married life. Over 20 years, adjusting for 3% annual inflation, this reconstruction tax totals approximately $450,000. This is money spent on basic survival and social maintenance that, in his previous life, would have been diverted to his brokerage account or high-yield savings. When we aggregate these numbers, the $2.1 million in loss compounding, the $744,000 in gross support earnings, the $510,000 in real estate friction, and the $450,000 in reconstruction costs, the total economic footprint for Thomas over 20 years exceeds $3.8 million. This is the true number. This is the price of starting over in your 50s in the 2026 American economy. For Thomas, this results in a potential outcome where his retirement age is pushed from 65 to 75, and his projected inheritance for his children is reduced to almost nothing. Now let us compare the two divergent paths: stability versus the silver poverty trap. Historical trends in 2026 suggest that men who recover financially share three specific step-by-step behaviors. First, they engage in radical downsizing within the first 6 months. They move into housing that costs less than 25% of their single-income take-home pay, even if it means a significant drop in status. Second, they perform a career pivot to increase their gross margin. Instead of staying in a plateaued executive role, they move into consulting or high-stakes sales where their income isn't capped, allowing them to out-earn the support modifications. Third, they prioritize health as a financial asset. By avoiding the common potential outcomes of stress-related illness or substance abuse, they maintain their peak earning capacity well into their late 60s. Contrast this with the silver poverty trap path. This occurs when a man tries to maintain the marital standard of living on a single income. He stays in an expensive apartment, continues to lease luxury vehicles, and uses high-interest credit to bridge the gap during the support years. By the time his support obligations end, his credit is destroyed, his retirement accounts are hollow, and he has zero home equity. In 2026, we see a growing demographic of men over 65 who are rent-burdened, spending more than 50% of their Social Security and remaining savings on housing. This is the ultimate economic footprint, the transition from a wealth builder to a wealth consumer with no safety net. The data-driven reality is that the U.S. legal and financial system of 2026 is designed for the efficiency of the split, not the recovery of the individual. The footprint is structural. It is baked into the tax code, the interest rate environment, and the compounding math of the retirement system. For the American man, a divorce is not just the end of a relationship. It is a hostile takeover of his financial future. The only way to mitigate the footprint is to understand the granular math before the first legal document is ever signed. You cannot manage what you cannot measure, and most men do not measure the cost until they are already 10 years into the deficit. This concludes our deep dive into the economic footprint of divorce for men in America. We have mapped the path from the initial legal retainer to the final silver poverty trap. We have looked at the hidden taxes, the business valuations, the credit traps, and the multi-generational wealth destruction that defines the current landscape. But while the economic footprint is massive, it is only one side of the coin. The financial cost is the foundation, but the true impact is how that cost interacts with a man's future ability to build a new family and a new legacy in a world that has become increasingly expensive. There is a final, even deeper layer to this story that involves the premarital strategy. If the footprint is this large, how do the most successful men in the United States protect themselves before the walk down the aisle? In our next series, we are going to dive into the specialized world of the 2026 Asset Protection Masterclass. We will look at the evolution of the prenuptial agreement in the digital age, the use of domestic and international trusts to wall off generational wealth, and the specific legal frameworks used by the top 1% to ensure that a personal split never becomes a financial liquidation. The footprint is real, but it doesn't have to be your footprint. We will see you in the next series for the blueprint on how to build a life that is divorce-proof from day one.